Long weekends are for beers and backyard barbecues, babes and babies, and other bee things like buoyancy tests for your life preservers if you're on a lake. We're making ribs. It is a story as old as stardust, ribs. My mother used to make ribs all the time, and they were usually but to make great ribs, you really only need a few basic ingredients and a few basic tools. An oven, a barbecue, ribs, some sort of sauce, and spices. That's pretty much all it really takes. Look, a lot of people do ribs, and they do oven ribs, and they do slow cooker ribs, and they do... That's not for me. What I like is oven barbecued ribs. What does that entail? Well, let me show you. First, you need ribs, and you need spices. Look, they can say whatever they want, but the truth is all basic rib rubs really contains essentially the same ingredients with a little bit of extra thrown in, a little bit taken away, and so on and so forth. I have never seen a rub that doesn't contain garlic powder, cayenne in some form, usually a small bit of paprika, smoked paprika if you have it, chili powder, dehydrated onion, and those are sort of the basic building blocks of any sort of rub. I like adding sumac as well. If you don't know what sumac is, tangy and fruity with a touch of saltiness. Of course, I always like a little bit of Old Bay as well. We're also going to add some dehydrated onion powder, as well as the mystery ingredient, which is freshly ground coffee. Why ground coffee? Well, first off, I'm a big fan of coffee, personally. Coffee adds a nice, rich robustness to most meats. It's especially good on beef, and I use it in almost all of my beef roasts. But when it comes to any sort of barbecuing, really, coffee is a fantastic combiner. So, let's add random amounts of all of these spices together. Garlic, sumac, chili powder, cayenne. Now, obviously, depending on how you like your heat, you want to keep your cayenne relatively low. Paprika, Old Bay, black pepper, and we just mix it up with our baby whisk, and we smell. So the coffee is very powerful, but one of the things we want to test is whatever barbecue sauce you're using, smell that. Would it go well together? This one smells fairly tart, fairly sour. So I'm gonna add a bit more of the sumac. And there we go, we have our dry rub. Look, dry rub does not have to be the end all be all. The whole point of dry rubbing is experimenting with different flavors and trying to combine them to make a perfect mix. Eventually one day you might get to a mix where you absolutely adore your dry rub and then you bottle it and sell it, or you keep it on the shelf and you try to recreate it every time. But look, for me, when it comes to cooking, what I like to do is try to make a new dry rub every time and see what works and see what doesn't. Baking sheet. Now, what you want to do is you want to grab one that is a bit old and dirty. This one I use for a lot of cooking along this line, because what you're going to have is you're going to have a lot of fat leaking out over time from when the ribs are cooking. Using a lot of tin foil, you want to cover the base as much as you can, because ultimately there's going to be a lot of fat that renders out and juices out. But this is what's going to cook our ribs in the oven. What we're going to do is we're going to put the ribs on here, we're going to coat them in our dry rub, we're going to wrap it up tight, and it's basically going to steam really low in the oven for, I don't know, like 2 hours or something. Dry rub it on. There. Ribs are rubbed, we wash our hands, and we tent this bad boy up. Pro tip, you don't want the ends sticking off. Even the little shoots, what will happen is the fat might come up and it will just leak over into your oven. Very bad news. The oven to 250. And we will set the timer for 2 hours. In the meantime, we must ask ourselves the age-old question: what do you cook along with ribs? Pause for dramatic effect. Apples. Not that one. That's a bad one. Why not? Apples are delicious with pork, especially if you're making pork ribs, which are, of course, the best ribs. They're delicious, they're tart, they're fruity, and they're nice and sweet. Let's start by peeling them. Peeled. If you own one of these like me, it's about the most useless thing you have in your kitchen, but nonetheless, when needed, it serves as a great way to uncore these bad boys. Save these because you can return them to your local orchard for free apples. Not really, don't do that, that's a joke. Ringed. Drizzle with a touch of honey. And sprinkle with cinnamon. Now what we're really looking to do is just sort of soften these up and brown them a little bit. So we'll throw them in the oven along with our ribs. But they want much less time. I'd say maybe 20 minutes to half an hour. But we'll check them in 15. So we remove the apples and cut them up. I'm just gonna add a little bit of sugar and then cover them and let them sit. So it's been about 2 hours, and now we're going to check. Everything should be good. Now watch, when you open this, there's gonna be a billowing steam. Woo-hoo-hoo. Remember, the goal here is not completed ribs. All we wanna do, look at all that juice. You want to cook them so that the connective tissue starts pulling back. And as a good test, this is a bone. See how that comes right out? These are cooked, but not overcooked. They're cooked so that everything is nice and soft and tender. Now we want to let them sit. And we're going to make our coleslaw. Yes, that's right, coleslaw. When making ribs, you don't need potatoes or french fries or any heavy sides like that. Ribs themselves are delicious and moist and tender. So now when it comes to coleslaws, there's two schools of thought. There's the creamy thought and there's the vinegar base. Now, when I like pork, aka pulled pork and pork ribs, I prefer the vinegar base. When I'm eating other things, I prefer the cream base, but you know what? I'm also not a family of one, and my wife prefers the cream base, so we're going to make the cream base. Now, a coleslaw comprised of different types of lettuces and carrots, and you can shred individually each piece, and you can make sure they're all uniform in size and all that kind of stuff. Coleslaw's done. Now it just needs a dressing. And you know what? Unless you're really trying to impress people, who cares? Use any dressing that you have in the fridge that would work equally good for a salad. Because the ribs are the point of the meal. This is just bonus. What's that, they ask? Well, you notice all that juice at the bottom of the pan? Well, you can drain it into a ramekin of some sorts or a jar, and you can save it and use it. But what a lot of people do is they take a little bit of this and they mix it into the barbecue sauce, or they make a barbecue sauce from scratch using it. Now, I'm not a from scratch barbecue sauce kind of guy. People have perfected it over years. To me, it's unnecessary. But if you want to be a purist and you want to make sure that at least your flavors are going to coincide and mix well with the barbecue sauce, you might want to add some of this back to it before you coat the barbecues on the barbecue. Does that make any sense? Sort of. The most important thing to remember when barbecuing is, well, everything on this table. But not necessarily just the things on the table, more the idea behind it. Mise en place, meaning that everything is in its place. You get your ribs ready, you get your container for the barbecue sauce, you have your little brush for said barbecue sauce, you have your tongs in case you need help, you have your flippers in case, well, you wouldn't really be flipping this, you have your gloves in case something goes wrong, your lighter up there, as well as your brush to scrape it all down, and of course the sauce. The only thing missing here is a plate to put it all on when it's done, but luckily I've timed myself out, so when it is on, we're okay. I can run upstairs and grab another plate. But if you're not like me, you make sure you have that plate ready. This is ready to barbecue. And there you have it, ribs. Started in the oven, finished on the barbecue. The only thing left to do is to cut them up. Oh yeah. And there you have it. Perfectly tender barbecue pork ribs. As always, the most important part of cooking dinner is enjoying it with one's family. Isn't that right?
Yes. Do I get to be the taste tester?
Always. Always and forever.
That's really good. Spicy.
Yeah, the sauce is a bit spicy.
Spicy.
How are the apples?
Cool.
Good?
I'm not gonna lie, I was eating them when you were downstairs.